Okay.
What there first? Yep.
Should we get closer?
If you want to. I don't have a very loud voice, so the closer you get, the better probably for your ears. Unless I get real excited, then I'll start shouting.
We can like to hear that.
Well, thank you all for coming today and to learn a little bit more about Safe Families. Before we really jump into what we want to share with you, we'd love to hear who you are, maybe how you heard of this meeting or Safe Families, if you're representing an organization, or what drives you to this mission. So, Martha, would you like to start us off?
Okay, I'm Martha Allen, and Troy invited me. I'm not really representing.
Choose the members who sort of play schools. So I'm Joy, and I'm sort of a member of the group that's involved in Safe Families. Part of the Catalyst team.
Debbie Kramer, I'm also a member of the group that's trying to bring this to South County.
My name is Britt Grange, and I am the Director of Development in Dane County. For Safe Families.
I'm Amanda Combs. I'm the Director of Development in Jefferson and Dodge Counties and Director of Operations for the state for Safe Families for Lebanon.
I'm Dave Mowers. I serve this congregation, Trinity Church, here in Baraboo, and I'm president of the board of directors for Baraboo Area Homeless Shelter.
I'm David Wall. I just do street ministry in Baraboo and Portage, and I'm just happy to be here. I think that as Christians that we proclaim such an amazing God, and we're putting Band-Aids on situations, and I just really I love, just somebody that starts something up because God put it on their heart, and I really believe that the miraculous can come out of that thing, and so I'm excited to hear what you're doing, and just happy to be here.
Michelle Vandehay, I'm in the Sauk City area, and I'm part of the Catalyst team for bringing this to Sauk County, so, yeah.
John Rampton, and again, part of the Catalyst team as well. What my passion, or what has gotten me interested in working, and I have a nonprofit 6A with my wife, helped to lead that, and Roy and Rebecca, in seeing the work we do within poverty, people living and experiencing poverty. We have a lot of families sometimes that find themselves in tough situations, that all income classes families find themselves in tough situations, but particularly in poverty, we can't throw money at the solutions. We can't hide it under the rug, or an expensive rug. And so we get to see it kind of bubbling up and seeing just how it impacts the whole family, the mom, the dad, the children, or whatever the situation might be. They kept wanting to do more, and also being an adoptive parent of our oldest son, seeing and being able to see how families and community can, from a child that was local to our town, and so seeing how we can wrap ourselves around there as well, and in the getting connected to within the school district, seeing that they also, as I think the family structure is evolving and devolving and changing and things like that, that it's hard. There's more, as extended families are separating, there's more isolation, and just seeing my heart going, there's a lot that we can stand in the place as to be an extended family, even if not by blood, because of how our culture and makeup is changing too, that there's opportunity for us to become family for our neighbors and things like that. So I was drawn in and passionate about the child in all situations. So that's what drove me to get involved.
And I'm Rebecca Kirch. I became on staff of 6-8 just about a year ago, and I was tasked with, there's a lot of resources in Dane County for maternity maternal health, diaper banks, those type of things, and what type of support could we have in Sauk County. And so that led us to form this team, and it was a big question mark of what do we do first, but we narrowed it down to we're gonna do something about infertility support, adoption, foster care, and pregnancy. And even that was huge. But then a team member brought up Safe Families, and the more we learned about the organization, the more we thought, this actually hits all of those categories in kind of a unique and different way. And so that's where this started and how we got started, kind of uncovering what Safe Families is and just a real drive to bring it to our county, our communities. So that's why I'm here, why many of the team is here, and many said that they're part of the Catalyst team, and you'll learn more about that as we kind of go on. So Safe Families is an organization that's really the essence and what they strive to do is provide extended family for those, like John said, who aren't necessarily related by blood. So that means that we become aunties, uncles, grandparents by relationship to one another in our community. And to provide that support that parents are seeking, and it's voluntary for those parents to seek that out. Safe Families exists because of social isolation, and that could be socially isolated because of a medical issue, because of a physical disability, social isolation, and knowing that those isolations can happen and maybe there's not a good support, even if it is a biological support. Maybe I can't reach out to someone in my own family to help take care of my kids or get advice on parenting. So to really bring the support that's already lacking or that may be lacking in family lives. And then knowing that those family-like relationships can really transform families who are struggling and can transform for generations to come. Once that support is there and it's kind of this ongoing support, it's not, it may be a hosting for 3 days, for 3 months, but then the continuation of that relationship is what transforms those families. And not just the family who's struggling, but the family who's hosting. And our communities and all of our families are strengthened by that model.
Yeah, so what are our objectives of Safe Families, what are the goals of trying to accomplish is really family preservation, right? That we know that by keeping the family together in most all circumstances, is better for the whole family and better for the children. And often, some outside support is needed in order to maintain that preservation before it gets to a point where, the law needs to step in and remove those situations. And then it becomes harder, as you know, then there, damage is done and it's reached that point of where preservation is harder because of those effects. I just was 2 days ago actually, I was meeting with the superintendent about this, bringing it to the school district and sharing this, what it was, and he shared he hears, tons of stories. He had a father last year that were in the office and was basically going, I need help, I need support, I need someone to take my child or something bad is going to happen, and they were trying to get connected with the county, and they basically said, we can't do anything until something has happened. And I'm like, well, shame on us that we can't step in, and so this father's left like, I have to hurt my child for this to even happen, and the father was just, is there anything that this community could help me in this moment? So I was like, wow, right here, and the superintendent got to see that real life experience. And so what the objective is, it provides just that temporary safe place for children when times are needed, before it gets to crisis, before it gets too far, the community steps into place, and it's a safe, organized structure that's there, so it takes care of it. It's like a foster care like system with the vetting and the checks and things like that, so that the parents and the child can know that there's those things have been considered and safety issues have been considered but it's still under a voluntary situation, so that can lead to that temporary for whatever, so the parent can receive what the needs they need and get that stabilization, so that the family can get back united. And so, it provides that, like Rebecca said, that temporary family, extended family, when extended family isn't available, to bring that stabilization. And this all sounds really cool and good, and we're here in a church, and so we have the ability to their practices, right? Their goals, this radical hospitality. These are three beautiful things that we learned about Safe Families that just we glommed onto. And this idea is it's a radical hospitality because it's radical because it's not common, right? And we have come where we take care of ourselves, and if you become, even if you age or if you need the community, you rely on your family. We tend to say things like, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to burden my neighbors, burden my community, burden my parents, burden my children. And we, as what Safe Families is saying, the goal is to become hospitable, and it's radical because we don't normally do it, right? It disrupts. And so we have volunteers that come on with their generosity, and that disrupts the status quo, right? And so just a cool example, my wife's grandmother was aging. She just recently passed away, and she just did not want to go to a home. She was going to die in her house, but she started needing more care, and the concern of falling and stuff. And so they had somebody come in a couple hours, and then she needed almost 24-hour care. And the siblings, she has 6 kids. She has 6 kids. They were talking about how we're going to do this and what we're going to do, and one of them said, my wife and I, we're retired, the kids are all out, we will move in with mom, grandma, and live there for 5 days a week, and then the rest of the siblings can share the weekends. And my father-in-law was like taken aback, like this is unfair, they're being way over the top, they're going to regret this, and he was disrupted, right? And so it was disrupted for grandma because her life, she was able to die in her home the way she wanted, surrounded by her family, but it also disrupted the bystanders, right? It showed the world around them that this generosity isn't normal, right? And it comes from a heart overflowing with generosity. So the cool thing about Safe Families is it not only will disrupt that family in need, that crisis situation, but it starts to disrupt the community that we live in, because people will start looking at us going, this community takes care of people totally different than what we see around the world. And so that disrupts in a beautiful way. Isn't that cool? And it's intentional, though. Often in my work, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. We have this slogan here. Sometimes when something happens, people just start puking generosity, right? They don't think about it, they just puke it up, And just a case story, we had a family that their house burned down, and the community was like, how can we help? We'll bring you food, we'll bring you clothing, you need furniture, and they're living in a hotel. They don't have their work, like what they need is a place to live. They need a place to rent, right? And so yes, eventually we might need this, but it's beautiful, right? People just love to give, but it wasn't intentional. It was just this vomiting of goodness, right? And so within Safe Families, though, it calls for that same level of compassion, but it is intentional, it's strategic, it's planned out, it's thoughtful, and there's a process in which you enter, and there's a process in which you can get involved, and it's intentionally putting lives together that may not have ever been connected, but now they are connected on a common goal of bringing that family together. And so that intentional compassion is a beautiful thing. It allows for the community to puke that generosity, but it also is intentional and strategic. What does Safe Families offer? So we've been hinting at this, but like a family-like support. So it's just a voluntary, as if one of your family members, your cousins or your nieces or nephews needed something, you would step in. It's a space and time for parents to get back on their feet, whatever the situation might be, whether it's a medical or financial or emotional or legal matter, that gives them time and space to be able to do that. And it's a break from that daily pressures of parenting, which I can speak so personally on too, that sometimes it's just really hard to do anything, and these things that need life support, you know, from you to be able to live. So it's hard to get yourself back out of a tough situation if you're also trying to be a great parent at the same time. Prayer and willingness to discuss spiritual issues. So in this matter, it relies on a lot of, you know, people of faith support to be able to step up. It has the support of churches and things, and it gives that opportunity, and not as a pressure or a requirement, but often people as they're working through many material and physical issues, there's also this just personal and purpose and spiritual support that's lacking. There's a poverty right there of that connectedness to something outside of themselves, something outside of their world around them. And so it gives that opportunity to slow down and provide that other deeper issues will come up as we're caring for families, because that space is provided. Help with problem solving. Again, while this is happening, there's also other underlying issues and problems that need to be solved and worked on. And so it gives that time and that relationship to be able to enter in. And by building that relationship, you can do those types of conversations and things that you can't just, maybe Dave can speak to that, you can't, hard to walk up to someone on the street and tell them, these are the things you gotta work on. They don't know you, but if you allow them to move into your house, or you're caring for your kids, and you're meeting with them, and you're building that relationship, you can be able to reflect that mirror, and those problem solvings can happen more organically. And that social connection too, there is, as we all know, there's this growing social isolation, and it's just wreaking havoc on our mental health and our emotional behavioral health. And so it again disrupts that mode and say, I know we've gotten really comfortable being alone and isolating, but it's so much more human to be uncomfortable bumping shoulders and living together and sharing and getting into each other's business in the long run is actually healthier for us in the way we were designed. And that hospitality, it offers that hospitality, welcomeness, openness, that all are welcome if you need something to bring that up. And it has a huge resource network too. We'll get into some of that in a little bit, but it's not just the families watching the kids, hosting the families, but there's a whole network of volunteers and folks that can be called on for other resources and things that one person could not do on their own. So being a part of a larger group, and even something part of Safe Families of Wisconsin, or even Safe Families International, we have a lot more resources network that we can pull from. How do parents hear about it? So again, this is a grassroots kind of organic. It comes into an organization as it grows, and into a community as it grows, and people hear about it, and there's referrals, and as their interests and needs and then commitments, Safe Families can grow into an area, and it relies entirely on those gateway, those entry-level organizations and businesses to hear about a referral in. Obvious ones, are on this list, but hospital, police stations, the state workers, homeless shelters, schools, addiction services, other social services, domestic violence centers, crisis pregnancy, early childhood, all of that, they touch families with young children every day. And so the goal of the growth into that is to get in those partnerships and relationships so that referrals can happen, and so folks can hear about this opportunity, how they can get connected prior, and going to a doctor's visit and stuff. You often hear about needs for these things in family before crisis, or before legal things may be required or step in. And so it relies heavily on this partnerships with people who are on the front gate of hearing about working with families.
And that's also kind of why we're excited that you're here today, because maybe you don't know how you're going to get involved in Safe Families, but now you know Safe Families. And so you can go ahead, David.
Just a quick question, just so I have some context here. Is Safe Families a governmental operation, or is it a faith-based operation?
I can answer that. It is not governmental, but it is a public entity. So it is privately funded, and we are not government employees. We're actually employees of the Safe Families for Children National Alliance. So it's a nonprofit, but we're a public entity. So there's not a faith statement that goes along with that, but it's rooted in faith. And part of the reason for that is we like to be ecumenical. So all areas
Right.
being able to help with that.
I didn't know if there would be an opposition to faith-based information.
No.
Okay, very well, thank you, I appreciate that. That gives everything more context.
question, thank you. Yeah, and so, I mean, we were talking, even as you meet people, you see, have you heard of Safe Families? Yes, and then it gets it in people's ears, and then it is kind of a friendlier, softer touch, rather than saying, would you like your kids taken away from you? That's not what we're after, but would you like help taking care of your kids? Have you heard of Safe Families? And so it's not in our community yet, but we're trying to get it there, and so as you hear more about it, you too might be the person who says to someone in your life, have you heard of Safe Families? And that's another way people can hear about it. Britt or Amanda, would you care to speak to these next couple?
Yeah, I can come up there. Project a little bit. Yeah, so Safe Families for Children in Wisconsin has been in Wisconsin since 2011 when the Safe Families Act was put into place. It was not legal in Wisconsin before that, so that's when it started. We currently have 7 service areas that cover 14 counties. Britt is here from Dane County. She's the most recent launch. I think the launch your intake line.
We launched our intake line in
May of this year. But it takes a while to get to that point of getting an intake line launched. But one of the things that we've seen as we look at the needs, who we host, who we serve, families with children. So if we have individuals without children, that's not part of our mission, it's not part of our scope. If there's children that are in foster care and working towards reunification, that's definitely something that we support that parent in working towards reunification, and even have some really good relationships with county workers in a lot of our different areas. Families that lack a support system, we heard about that with John and with Rebecca. And they're facing life challenges, and that can be a whole gamut of things. Life challenges can be anything from lost job or childcare to needing to do some inpatient mental health treatment, or having to go for medical appointments or an overnight stay, or at the very least, just I'm a single mom. I'm not, but I'm a single mom, and I just have like a lot of hard times and struggles parenting my young children, and just having someone in your corner, that's a life challenge, that we can help with. But currently in Wisconsin, there are over 7,000 children in the foster care system. But the kind of stark difference in that is 85% of CPS calls do not open up into a case because they're not substantiated. So there was someone that saw concern and wanted to call on this family, but it's not a substantiated concern. And so what happens to those other 85% of the families, right? There's a need there that Safe Families can step in and help with. We do host children 0 through 18. We rarely host parents with their children, but sometimes we do. We've been getting more and more requests for that, partially because homeless shelters are super full and there's long waiting lists. But a lot of times those exceptions are made for a pregnant mother who is going to be going into labor at some point, so having her kids already where they're going to be, it makes a lot of sense. And about 85% of our children that we serve are 8 years old or less right now. That actually used to be 6 or less pre-COVID, and it's gone up again to 8 or less. So that's where we're at right now. Yeah. And then things to note, if you didn't hear it already, Safe Families for Children is not foster care. It's voluntary. Rebecca touched on that. It's voluntary for the parents, and we also utilize volunteers because there's no barrier to relationship there. When someone's not being paid to help you, they're just doing it out of their own heart and their own willingness to do that. Assistance is always temporary, so temporary meaning as short as a day, as long as a year. And that assistance can look like family friendship, it can look like hosting, it can look like a combination, but all the time it's temporary. Our goal is to jumpstart relationships so that a parent then has the relationship lifelong and ongoing. Hopefully we aren't facilitating that for a very long period of time. We find that 3 to 6 months for a family friendship is pretty typical unless there's child welfare involvement, because oftentimes child welfare likes to see that extended relationship before we end up closing them and just letting people loose into their friendship. But parents don't lose custody when they're working with Safe Families for there is a need for us to report a safety issue to CPS, they handle that. It's something that we don't handle. We are mandatory reporters as staff and city staff, but they do not lose custody through Safe Families ever. And in the state of Wisconsin, 95% of the kids go home consistently when they were posted. And we actually have increased our family friendships as we've come out of COVID, and there's more support for parents trying to keep their children with their families. And so we have seen less and less of that, ratio of posting to family friendship. Posting is a little less than that ratio. But the goal is family preservation. So those kids staying with their parents, supporting their parents so that we can ensure that they're in a stable place. Well, we're volunteer driven, and so that's why all of you are here. But we're also professionally supported, so that's why Britton and I are here. So we keep our staff really light so that we can do some of that background work of, intake line, equipping, vetting volunteers, case management, referral source engagement, things like that, so that individual volunteers can just be connected with one family at a time, and then be able to serve and love without having to think about all those things in the background. That's the professional support that we provide.
So we wanted to share, this is a video from Safe Families about a hosted situation, and it kind of shares the relational aspect of the relationships that are made between families in a hosting situation.
Victoria. He's coming. Mom, it's Victoria here. Here?
I never really had a good support system, and so I kind of never really had someone to kind of reach out and help me. I never really had someone I could go to, and like most people, if you fall on hard times or if you lose your job or you need a babysitter, they have someone that they can call. And until I met Aaron Patrick and Amy and Dave, I never had that. Safe Families have connected me with a lot of relationships that I have now. Through Safe Families, I've actually met an extended family. Safe Families help me and my kids find a home and get back on my feet. I know my kids was placed in a hostess family, which was actually the best decision I've ever made. It was a hard decision, but it was actually the best decision I've made.
That's kind of like made it like this whole story, like this whole cool thing that, it's not just you watch your kids for a little while and then they left. It was like we, built the relationship. Yeah, we have a relationship. We have a whole new family, and then even how it connected us too, which is really cool.
They were ups and downs for sure, I would say. I mean, there was an adjustment period, and we had a grown woman come and live in our home and a complete stranger. So, there were definitely adjustment periods, and we had to get to know you as much as you had to get to know us. I mean, it was just as hard for you to be in our home of complete strangers. And, I love what you guys have said, though, that over time, all of that has sort of just softened everybody, and we've built this great relationship among all of us, you know, even through really some difficult times, you know, but that's what builds a relationship, right? And if you can hang in there and you can talk and communicate and share, and I mean, this has been such a unique experience for all of us. So, I don't know. Yeah. And I really appreciate that you gave me a gift that I would never otherwise have, is that to see you born. I mean, you invited me to be in the delivery room with you, which was the most special thing. I mean, I've never had children of my own, so this is something that I would never have otherwise. So that is a great gift for me as well, a great gift. And what do you think of it?
You guys didn't know me. You didn't know the type of person I was, and I was still like me to your home. Not a lot of people do that. And I really appreciate you guys because you guys have honestly changed my life and you changed my kid's life. Without, you guys, I honestly don't know where I would be right now. And I really appreciate that because you guys honestly saved my life.
Yeah, Aubrey. Aubrey. No, let's all do it. Ramona. Wait, one more time. One more time.
I just love that video. And I don't know if the end part is my favorite or all of it, but isn't that what Christ calls us to do? Wait until everybody's at the table, like your brother and your sister. And I just think it speaks so simply and beautifully of, we can overcomplicate, and these are complicated situations that we're getting into, right? But to simplify it to your family now. It's beautiful. And so, as it said, join the support, join this circle of support is kind of a phrase that's come up with Safe Families. And another thing that I really enjoyed hearing about and learning about was that there's a volunteer role depending on whatever your kind of preference and your comfortability level is, or if you want to go outside of your comfort zone. So that might be some of the different roles in that circle of support. One of them is a ministry lead, and so that's someone who's really connected at their church and who's getting volunteers from the church community, reminding them that Safe Families exist, bringing new people into the mission, and kind of checking in and being that liaison between the church support and the families and Safe Families. There's also volunteer family friends, so we talked about those a little bit, where it might be things like babysitting or going to the park with someone, talking to them on the phone. It could be hosting their kids, but maybe more of those kind of day-to-day, as you would call up a friend, a family friend type of thing. And then host families are those who are hosting kids in their own homes with their families. Again, it could be for a day, it could be for a week, it could be for the defined amount of time that mom and dad say, this is what we think we need. And so that's kind of determined before the volunteer host family says, yep, I think I'm ready to do this. There's this outline of this is what we anticipate, or this is how long we anticipate the hosting being for. And then a family coach will help families with their goals. That's so completing home visits. That might be answering the intake line. Is that true? Family coaching. Some of them.
Family coaches too.
Okay. And encouraging volunteers. So it might be a little bit more removed from the actual families, but still very much supporting them. And then resource friends could be, they can provide resources in a number of ways. That could be monetary donations, it could be supplies, bringing a meal over to a family. Also things like if you have professional services that you want to impart, hairstyling, haircuts, those type of things, or medical advice, that could be in the resource friend. And then of course in the circle of support is the family in isolation, that family voluntarily seeking help. And now before that circle can even begin, we're asking for Catalyst team members, and those are members of our community who want to bring Safe Families here, and they want to bring it to that launch phase where we can have the circle of support and we can open an intake line so that this model can be followed. And a Catalyst team member is committing to 2 hours per week of independent work. That independent work is kind of assigned or fueled by 5 months of equipping meetings, and each of those equipping meetings covers these different categories: the vision and the Catalyst team building, church engagement, learning the Safe Families for Children language, looking at area statistics and the needs and referral sources, budget, funding, building trust and donor engagement, and then volunteer onboarding process else to bring to the table. So the Catalyst team is working through all of these with Safe Families, staff support and teaching, and then that independent work, which really kind of gets you engaged locally, talking with churches and community volunteers, talking to those referral sources like we saw on the other slide, like the hospitals, the police departments, the homeless shelters, those type of things, and then engaging donors and parents in time. And so what we see as our next steps are to form that Catalyst team, individuals who are eager to meet, to go through those learnings, to really put the work in, and then during that Catalyst team phase, we'll be connecting with 4 to 5 interested churches who will say, yes, we want to be a church partner, who then would have like a ministry lead at their church to start that process and volunteer base at those specific churches, connecting with our potential donors. And then once those trainings, those 5 months of trainings take place, we have the church support, then to post the position for a staff role. So like Britt and Amanda said, they both are in the staff role in their communities for Safe Families. If the Catalyst team continues on, then Sauk County would have a staff position posted. And the Catalyst team is helping with that developmental search, or the developmental board and the staff search, and then there's staff onboarding, and then the launch of the intake line, which is when families can start calling and we start matching families in need with families who want to help. So that brings us to our interest form. From what you've heard, and there's going to be time for questions, but if you have some questions before you start filling these out, please let us know. We want to get kind of a pulse on what you're feeling your interest level of involvement is with Safe Families. So on this form, there will be those different roles within the circle of support as well as the Catalyst team member. So we'd love to collect those back today. If you would rather take some time to think about it, pray about it, we'd love that too. You can get those forms back to us at 6/8. But yeah, a description is on your form, kind of that circle, or the circle of support is also on there. So you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to fill out your information. If you have no idea how you want to get involved, but you know you want to be involved, if you could leave your information, and then there's a box on the back that says, I don't know, but keep me on your email list, and we will do that. Yes.
The 5-month commitment, now what does that entail time-wise, and where would the meetings be where you were being trained, that sort of thing?
Great question. Would you mind explaining the Catalyst team?
It did bring descriptions.
Good, yes.
Put that with you. So the 2 hours per week kind of individually is based on your involvement, your interests, you know, your background. Some people have more connections with churches, and some people have more connections with parents. Some people have more connections with donors or other organizations. So we're looking for people to take those 2 hours and engage with stakeholders in the community to kind of show us that the community is ready for it. Because us coming in as staff saying, hey, we want to bring this to your community, that means nothing to your local community. So showing us community readiness by just engaging those stakeholders in the community, that's that 2 hours. But then the hour-long meeting that we would do monthly for the 5 months, that's something that can be offered both virtually and in person. So you can talk about doing that at 6-8, and then offering it virtually as well for those that are not directly in Stockton. So that's led by staff in Wisconsin. I would be leading the first one for sure, and staff around the state can kind of based on their expert level and their ability to do that, would come in and train on those different things. Does that answer your question in total?
Typically, when you go into the community, is there like a team, 2 of you, or is there just always individuals?
On the Catalyst team, do you mean?
Yeah, the team that's going into the community and telling you we're here.
It all depends on your comfort level. Some
Oh,
people
I
will
see.
want to do that individually, and some people won't, and that's totally fine.
I didn't know if they had
Yeah.
somebody that was a
Rick was
trainer.
a part of
go
the
along.
Catalyst team in Dade County. Did you have experience with people going in teams? I wouldn't say that you can't do that. I think it's a great idea.
It is a great idea. I think more so it's just like the Catalyst team in my mind is really just to gain momentum in the community, to let people know we are interested in bringing this here. If you're interested in this or being a part of this, we'd love to have you join the next interest meeting, or we'd love to introduce you to the Catalyst team so that you can learn more about it. Just kind of that, just bringing an awareness, I think, to the community is probably the main objective. The awareness is big, because I know she mentioned this a little bit, but it's it takes 6 touch points for someone to hear something before they even get involved. So the more people talking about it, the more it's gonna help this be successful. So that's really what I think the hour or 2 a week can go towards, is really just being intentional about meeting with people, going out for coffee with somebody, or having some friends over for dinner or something, or talking to your dentist, or just talking about it. It's basically just a commitment to talk about it, but then also trying to make connections with people in the community too, like Amanda mentioned, there's so many resources just in our lives and even in our church, where it's everybody's got their different gifts, their different abilities and talents that they can bring to the table, and so would they want a seat at the table for this? It's a lot of engaging interest, spreading momentum and awareness.
Did that answer your question completely?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so as Rebecca mentioned, if you will grab those forms before you leave for us to have a touch point and follow up with you. And if you're still thinking about it, that's all right too. But we just want to take a moment to talk about how the Safe Family churches are are kind of the backbone or a backbone to Safe Families, and for a number of reasons, they partner well with Safe Families in that there's shared values in caring for and extended families, especially, I can speak personally on the Christian model where we are an adoptive family, right? So it works perfectly for what Safe Families is talking about, this extension, we're adopted into a new family, and so we're all brothers and sisters, and if we aren't taking care of our family, then that's as strong as we really are as a community. But also supported by that church as a natural gathering of individuals of those shared values, that it's great for recruiting volunteers, and there's often every Sunday, people sitting in the pews that are interested in connecting their gifts and their talents and their availability, and to support recruiting those volunteers and then supporting those volunteers. And as Rebecca said too, some of us have the gifts and talents and passions to just gather things, and others of us would love to host families, and others of us just want to get the word out. And so it takes the whole community, the whole church to be able to do that. And they partner well when participating in that circle of support, because they have that sort of dynamic right there in the church, and can identify those needs and get the word out. And they have generally a location and things to be able to point people to and collect. As a need arises, and Safe Families then reaches out to needing a host family or needing certain resources, or maybe diapers or food or whatever the situation might be, the churches are a great way to just disseminate that in our current kind of makeup. So the churches really are as that backbone, and so part of Safe Families in this launching phase, or this catalyst phase, is getting partnerships with churches, and we want to look at our church connections as a whole county to be able to have pastors and leadership in churches to say, our church will partner, and we're really good. We always just sit on way too much money, and so you can have some of our money, or our church wants to partner, and we have a little bit of money, but we have a lot of old people that have no kids in their homes, and they're looking, and so our church might naturally fit into this, or we have a real diverse church, and so we're going to partner, and as needs arise, let us know, and we will pass those on, and the congregation will decide how they want to respond. But in general, our church is a partner. We want to support, bring awareness to Safe Families, and also raise the needs to the congregation. So a church gets to decide their partnership. There isn't a scary contract. If you want to become a partner, you owe 10% of your budget. There's no contractual right as a partnership. There's just a relationship that begins, and the church leadership can decide what's best for them. But having that church support is vital for a community to adopt, because it's a way that grassroots can kind of grow in. So that's really what we have to present. The next slide just says questions. So since no one has questions, I'm assuming, but we can take any questions. There it is.
I'm very wise. Why is this? Why is that?
Yeah.
No, would you mind leading us in prayer for God's favor?
Yeah, I would love to do that. Are there other things? No, it's a great time to pray. Always a good time to pray. So Father God, we pause here as we are learning about Safe Families. Holy Spirit, we ask that you fill this room and fill our hearts, inspire each one of us, and put in our mind exactly how you want us individually to get involved. Lord, I ask that you give us names, organizations, connections that you have given to us in our lives. You've been, structuring and organizing this for decades, for this moment, and you know that you've given us connections. And so bring those people, those ideas, the methods in which you want me to get involved, and inspire us right now, on what that is. Encourage us to do that, Lord. And I ask that you pour out your Spirit on all of Sauk County and this region and this area. Each family right now that's struggling right now, that doesn't see a way out or a path of hope, I pray that you give that to them miraculously, Lord. And I also pray that you engage the church and your people and this whole community, and leadership to have a burning in their heart to do something and step in the place before crisis has to happen, Lord. Help us to have a new vision of support, a new vision of family, a new vision of community that includes reaching out to families with children who are in need, and identifying and understanding our own gifts and talents and how we can be used. Lord, I pray that you make a pathway that's smooth and you level the mountains and fill the valleys of the roadblocks and barriers that will be coming, and folks that want to resist any kind of change or bringing this to our community. I pray that you soften their hearts and open their minds to understand what this is and a desire just to serve and to love. We pray for just radical generosity, disruptive generosity, radical hospitality, and intentional compassion to be pouring out of the people who live in Sauk County. And we do it all in your name. Amen. Any questions too that you want us that we didn't? We have some folks from Safe Families here so they can answer more.
Just as a ballpark, it sounds like a significant amount of the families who come into this program are looking for something other than hosting, or if it's hosting plus a longer term relationship with the family, the volunteer family as a whole. Is that fair? Does that seem like?
That would be the goal.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we found a lot more success in the past couple of years, like since coming out of COVID, in having the relationship start first, even if there is a hosting that needs to happen. So in very emergent cases, like I am on the way to the hospital delivering a baby and I'm bringing 3 kids with me. That obviously we can't start a relationship ahead of time. But when we need to, or when we have the luxury of saying, let's pair you with this volunteer first to build a relationship, and that volunteer will then either be your host family or be in your circle of support with another that might be a host family. Those relationships are stronger. They end up transitioning to a natural relationship smoother and last longer. And so I wouldn't say that, I would say the ratio, like I said, is going higher on family friendships, but I wouldn't say that the need for hosting is going.
Nobody comes into the program on the intake line and says, I just need somebody to be my friend.
They
It's
do.
like, they do? Oh, okay, well, that's good, good,
Yeah, they do.
good.
So I mean, it is a lot of people just actually do need that.
Yeah.
And so the more people that realize that, the better.
Yeah.
But a lot of times there's a need associated with whatever that ends up being. And again, it can vary widely based on what they call. You have some that have called saying, I need someone in my court, and what that ended up looking like is I had 2 kids with special needs. It's really hard parenting them. I don't know how to navigate IEPs or doctor's appointments or specialists, and so that parent with another volunteer actually had a child with special needs. That it's not a hosting relationship, but it is a friendship that's also filling the need that parent didn't know they had. I don't know if that answers.
That's perfect. Something we've noticed in, I said earlier, I'm the president of the board for the homeless shelter here. And we've rolled out a program the last 6 months or so, working with the families with kids who come into the shelter, and trying to get a volunteer family to come and care for the children while the parents are doing case management meetings with our staff. Because even, if you need one parent, you're trying to fill out forms and call landlords and all that stuff, like you can't do toddler things. So just we've noticed that we're able to have the same family come for the family that's there. There is this sort of organic thing that happens that I think is like what I saw up there in the video is what we would hope for that. But it also makes me think like, could we roll this out in a way that's bigger than just the shelter and just the clients we serve there, which are limited in number.
So I would love to piggyback off that because we just started our intake line in May in Dane County, and we have had 2 parents so far who have come out of, who are currently living in homeless much every day, that's a win. Like whether that's FaceTime, photos, phone call, anything like that. But then try to have a visit at least once a week where they can actually, because like we want the parents in the picture, we want them, like the parents are doing these things for their children, for themselves, but for their children. And so that they can get reunited faster. It helps the whole process. It's not traumatic because the parent is still in the children's lives consistently. So it's like there's so many pros to like working it out in that kind of natural way that we've seen. So yeah, that's just kind of one way that we've done it with homeless shelters. It's not the norm, but we do have a couple volunteers who are like, we can host a parent with their children. And again, that has happened in various number of ways. I think it's very intentional conversations that have to happen prior to that. But obviously, like if someone is already in relationship with this parent and they're having a difficulty getting housing and stuff like that, it's like, well, this person in your life has this move and they're open to it, you know, like that kind of stuff just happens more naturally. And I know, like, I say that, like, friendships and all this stuff, and it's like, friendships are kind of hard. They're, like, my coworker says, like, they're awkward. They don't really, like, you can't just say, like, I'm going to be friends with you now. What should we do? You know, like, kind of thing. So it's like, we try to be intentional about making good matches for the families. So the whole intake process is, like, 45 minutes to an hour long. Like, we're getting to know these parents we're serving. Same thing with the volunteers. We're doing background, home visits
homesteading,
and interviewing them. We call them assessments. So like we want to know all about them so that like, hey, this family's really good at this, and then oh my gosh, that's a good connection for this family. So like we try to make good matches so that it can transition to natural relationship easier and sooner. That's always the goal. That doesn't always happen, but I also think like the Lord works in mysterious ways where like I would have never paired them together. And they're still talking 8 months later, you know, so like that happens too. So anyway.
One of the things you mentioned, being part of the homeless shelter, made me think of partnerships that we have with homeless shelters and pregnancy centers in Jefferson and Dodge counties. And one of the things that they've expressed again and again is we are supporting a family from this point to this point, and then when they're past that, we have to start over. We can't just continue.
Yep.
And so having a natural progression of where they're going past that is where we have fit in really well.
Yeah, it makes me think that this is a continuing conversation that some of the shelter staff, not that I want to give them more to do, but
It feels like
at least having a conversation with some of the, because you know I can tell you about how they can for me, but I'm not sitting across from clients every day either. So that seems like something that I'll happen.
it's a good referral source.
Yeah. And I can speak too, and the shelter here, depending on bed configuration, it's around 24 beds capacity. And we've just tipped over 100 people on the waiting list. And those are people who are approved for the program, which means they don't have any open court cases and they haven't had any violence in the last 4 years. And, you know, so there's probably twice that number who have called us looking for help, lately. So the need for this sort of thing is beyond our capacity currently to
I'll just say this, like, my coworker and I, we met with the Salvation Army in Wayne County, and we were just having a conversation, letting her know we were there, and what our organization was like, and all these things, and she had heard about it through the grapevine, and so we got to meet with her and talk with her, and she was like, I have 150 families I could refer to you right now. And I was like, okay, well, we have 50 volunteers, so, and then it's like, you know, we need a couple of them to actually, like the circle of support in an ideal world to wrap around each family, so that really limits us, so give us some time, we'll get there. But anyway, the need is out there, and yeah, so.
How big are the churches that you support?
On the campus, I have coaches, because there are a lot of empty nesters, and some are a lot of stay-at-home moms, and so they have a lot of host families, and if you pair them together, that's a great partnership. So that's another way that we see them.
I was gonna say, we also have people who want to serve that their church is not partnered, and that is okay.
Yeah.
We will partner them, we have a lot of handfuls of people who their church is not partnered, but they still wanna serve, and we are more than willing to connect them with our
A
church and
ministry,
ministry,
yeah.
yeah.
Because that's the other thing, we don't want people doing this alone, because if you have one person helping one person, they're both thinking, and you have that circle of support and wrapping around them, that is when it works.
Any other questions? I feel like this parting thought that Mother Teresa said, the problem with our world is that we draw the circle of family too small. Thank you for coming. Feel free to kind of mingle and talk more, but I'll collect your interest forms, and we do hope to keep in contact, so
And
thank
then
you
is
for
there a
coming.
meeting tonight too?
And thank you, there is another meeting tonight, just like this one at 6 p.m. So if you've heard something and you're already on the phone trying to call some friends to say, I was at the meeting this afternoon, I think you should be there tonight. Same information, you can come back, but if there's others that you think should be here, please feel free to invite them. We would appreciate that.